The jungle at night wasn't just dark. It was a living void that consumed light. The canopy overhead formed such a dense lattice that even the full moon couldn't penetrate. The air hung thick and wet, coating every inch of skin with moisture that refused to evaporate. Heat was oppressive even at this hour, leaving the soldiers sweating through their gear as they moved in careful, measured steps through terrain designed to betray them. They had been moving for 6 hours straight. The mission briefing estimated 4, but reality rarely matched planning. The squad leader, Reeves, kept them moving at a pace that balanced speed with caution. Behind him walked Martinez, the point man, moving 5 meters ahead with his rifle ready, eyes constantly scanning for the 1,000 ways the jungle could kill them. Their mission was extraction. An intelligence asset deep in enemy territory needed retrieval. Simple on paper, impossible in practice. Everything had gone wrong since the helicopter drop. They'd taken ground fire, been forced to land 2 kilometers off target, and now they were racing against time to reach the extraction coordinates before the window closed. Reeves signaled another halt. His closed fist meant something serious. The entire squad became statues, years of training creating telepathy that didn't require words. Martinez, still ahead, had dropped to one knee, head tilted, listening to something specific in the jungle's cacophony. Then his hand came up with a new signal. 2 fingers to his ear, then forward, voices ahead. Human voices, moving their direction. Reeves processed instantly. Too close to turn back. Going around would add hours they didn't have, but walking into an enemy patrol would end everything. He signaled the squad to collapse formation, bringing everyone close enough to see his hand signals clearly. Enemy patrol, unknown size, we hold position, stay low, stay silent. If they pass, we continue. If they engage, we fight through, no retreat. Every soldier nodded. They sank into vegetation, each finding whatever cover existed. The voices grew louder. Flashlight beams began cutting through darkness, sweeping systematically. The patrol was being careful, checking behind trees, under bushes, along likely approach routes. The lights came straight toward their position. At this distance, concealment became luck as much as skill. 50 meters away, 40, 30. Reeves could make out individual figures now. He counted 7, spread properly, maintaining good spacing. These were trained soldiers. 20 meters, 15. One spoke into a radio, updating their position. If this patrol disappeared, reinforcements would know exactly where to look. Then Santos moved, the smallest weight shift imaginable. But underneath the leaves where he lay there was a branch, brittle, forgotten by time. When his boot touched it, the branch broke. The sound was tiny. In any normal place, it would be unnoticeable. But here, in the hyper-alert silence of a combat zone, that crack might as well have been a gunshot. The patrol stopped. All conversation ceased. Flashlight beams froze, then moved with purpose. Someone barked orders. They knew someone was nearby. Santos reached slowly into his pack. His fingers closed around a plastic bottle. A regular 2-liter soda bottle, scratched and cloudy from weeks in his pack. It looked like trash, but he screwed it carefully onto his rifle barrel. The patrol was 10 meters away now, fanning into a skirmish line. One stepped into a clearing, silhouetted against sky visible through a canopy gap. Santos squeezed his trigger. The sound was a compressed thump, so quiet it could have been a branch settling. The plastic bottle disrupted the muzzle blast, reducing it to something barely audible. The soldier dropped without sound. His flashlight rolled away, casting crazy shadows. The patrol reacted instantly, but searching for a muzzle flash they never saw, listening for a gunshot they never clearly heard. Confusion rippled through them. One fired blindly into jungle. Another shouted into his radio, transmission garbled and uncertain. Reeves tapped ground twice. Break contact, withdraw now. They moved as one, slipping backward with practiced efficiency. No running, just smooth, controlled movement that prioritized silence. Behind them, the patrol fired sporadically, still searching, still trying to understand what happened. The squad moved back 200 meters before Reeves signaled another halt. Santos unscrewed the bottle. It was deformed now, plastic melted and blackened. It wouldn't work again. But it had done its job, creating enough confusion to let them escape. They continued toward the extraction point at increased pace. Time was tightening. Then fog rolled in, dense and heavy, reducing visibility to less than 10 meters almost instantly. Fog destroyed visual navigation, forcing reliance on instruments. Chen pulled out his GPS. It took several minutes to acquire satellites under the dense canopy and fog. When it finally locked, his expression wasn't good. "We're 300 meters south of where I thought," he whispered to Reeves. Reeves pulled his compass to verify bearing. He frowned. The needle was spinning slowly, not settling on any direction. Thompson checked his compass. Same problem. The needle spun aimlessly, completely useless. They were lost. The GPS gave coordinates, but batteries were dying. Fog prevented visual navigation. Compasses were unreliable, and they had maybe 40 minutes to reach extraction before mission failure. Jackson, quiet and observant, reached to his uniform collar and worked at a button until it came free. Standard steel button. He pulled his sewing kit, selected the longest needle and began rubbing it against the button. Long, firm strokes, always the same direction. 50 times, 60, 70. Then he poured water into his canteen cap and set the button floating. He placed the needle on top. For seconds, nothing happened. Then the needle began rotating slowly until it aligned along a specific axis and stopped. "That's north," Jackson said simply. Jackson had magnetized the needle by rubbing it against the button. The water provided frictionless bearing that let the needle align with Earth's magnetic field. Brilliant in its simplicity. A button and needle from a sewing kit had saved them when technology failed. They had a bearing now. The squad moved through fog, maintaining tight formation. 20 minutes later, terrain began matching expectations. They spotted their landmark, a massive banyan tree whose aerial roots created a distinctive cage structure. Reeves and Martinez scouted ahead. The area was empty. No asset, no ambush, just fog and jungle and the massive tree. They were 5 minutes early. Reeves positioned his squad in defensive perimeter. Now came the hardest part, waiting. At the 5-minute mark, they heard movement. Someone approaching with a distinctive pattern. 3 steps, pause, 2 steps, pause, the recognition signal. A figure materialized. Civilian clothes, military posture. The asset gave the challenge phrase. Reeves responded with the countersign. Authentication complete. The asset joined them quickly. Mid-30s male carrying a small backpack. His face showed weeks of stress. Dark circles, weight loss, trembling hands. There was no time for introductions. Thompson became his personal escort. Whatever happened, Thompson's job was keeping this man alive. That was the mission now. They began moving immediately, the asset sandwiched in the squad's middle for maximum protection. Withdrawal went smoothly for the first kilometer. Then they reached the trench system. The trenches were old, dug during previous conflicts, now largely abandoned, but portions were still maintained. Intelligence said these trenches were clear. Intelligence had been wrong before. Reeves halted at the trench network's edge. They could go around, adding an hour, or go through, saving time but risking contact in confined spaces. The timeline made his decision. They had to go through. Martinez dropped into trenches first, rifle sweeping ahead. One by one, the squad followed. The walls rose up on either side. It felt like moving through a grave. Halfway through, they heard it. The distinctive sound of someone working a bolt-action rifle. Somewhere ahead, someone with a weapon. Someone who probably had clear sight into the trenches. They froze. Then dirt exploded from the trench wall 2 meters ahead of Martinez. The sniper had them ranged. Whoever was up there had perfect shooting position. Martinez pressed against the wall, making himself small. Everyone else did the same, but staying stationary wasn't an option. The longer they remained, the more time the sniper had for careful shots. Davis tried raising his machine gun to return fire, but the angle was impossible. The moment he lifted the barrel above the trench line, another bullet slammed into dirt beside him. This sniper was incredibly fast and accurate. Santos was thinking. The trench put them at severe disadvantage, but they had equipment and creativity. He found his shaving kit, pulled out a broken mirror shard and secured it to a thin branch with tape, a crude periscope. Slowly, Santos raised his mirror stick above the trench wall. The mirror caught sunlight and flashed. A bullet immediately cracked past, aimed at the flash, but Santos's body was well below the trench line. The sniper shot at the reflection. Santos adjusted angle and raised the mirror again more slowly. Through the small shard, he saw distorted images, trees, collapsed bunkers, and there, maybe 80 meters out, a mound of sandbags with a rifle barrel protruding. He raised the mirror, deliberately catching light. The flash drew immediate fire, but he saw the muzzle flash, saw exactly where the sniper was positioned. He handed the mirror to Jackson and whispered instructions. Working together, they began raising the mirror from different positions, watching carefully to see how the sniper reacted. They did this 7 times, watching for patterns, and slowly they found one. Every 90 seconds, the rifle barrel dipped slightly as the shooter adjusted position. That dip, that moment of inattention, that was their window. Santos took up firing stance, bracing against the trench wall to aim upward. He couldn't see his target, but he'd memorized distance, direction, and elevation from the mirror observations. Jackson raised the mirror. Santos watched the reflection through his own small mirror wedged in the wall. The rifle barrel stayed steady. 60 seconds, 70, 80. At 90 seconds, the barrel dipped. Santos squeezed his trigger instantly. 3 rounds rapid succession, aimed at his calculated position. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then they heard it, a distinct heavy thump, the sound of dead weight hitting ground. Martinez raised his head above the trench line, ready to duck. Nothing. Through his scope, he saw the sandbag fortification. Slumped behind it was a figure not moving. Target down, sniper position clear. They moved quickly from the trenches. The delay had cost time, and the jungle seemed determined to extract every toll. Temperature climbed. The morning sun burned through fog, creating a steam bath. Sweat poured off everyone. They reached another defensive line showing signs of recent fighting. Shell casings littered the ground. Reeves made the decision for brief rest. They'd been moving hard for 12 hours. The asset looked ready to collapse. Even experienced soldiers showed dangerous fatigue levels. Davis and Jackson set up their machine gun, covering the most likely approach. Davis ran his hand along the barrel and pulled back. The metal was hot even through his glove. Not just warm from ambient temperature, but actually hot from cumulative firefights and brutal jungle heat. "We need to cool this down," Davis muttered. "If we fire again with the barrel this hot, we'll have problems." They had no spare barrel, no cooling unit. Water would work but was precious. Still, if the weapon failed at critical moment, saved water wouldn't matter. Thompson looked at the problem, then down at his own feet. He got an idea that made Davis laugh despite their situation. "You're kidding," Davis said. "You got better idea," Thompson replied, already unlacing boots. Thompson stripped off his socks, thoroughly disgusting pieces of fabric inside his boots for 3 days. They were socks any sane person would burn rather than wash, but they were absorbent fabric that could hold water. He walked to a shell crater where rain had collected, creating a muddy puddle probably full of bacteria. He dunked his socks completely, then wrung them just enough that they held moisture without dripping. Back at the machine gun, he wrapped wet socks around the barrel, covering as much hot metal as possible. Steam erupted immediately, hissing as water contacted superheated steel. The cooling effect was immediate and dramatic. It wasn't permanent. The water would evaporate quickly, but it bought them time and brought the barrel to safe operating temperature. Reeves checked his watch. 20 minutes rest. Enough. They moved out again, leaving the defensive position. Terrain changed as they approached the river, marking the boundary between contested territory and friendly lines. They were entering the floodplain. The river was swollen from rains, moving faster than maps indicated. A patrol boat was supposed to meet them at specific coordinates. They still had to reach those coordinates, following the river downstream nearly 2 kilometers. Martinez spotted the patrol boat exactly where expected. He signaled recognition pattern with his flashlight. The boat's response came immediately. Authentication complete. The squad moved quickly to the riverbank. The boat crew had positioned for rapid boarding. One by one, soldiers climbed aboard, helping the asset over the gunwale. As soon as everyone was aboard, the engine increased power and they began moving downstream. For the first time in hours, Reeves allowed himself to relax slightly. They weren't safe yet, but immediate danger had passed. Then he heard the distinctive crack of incoming fire. Rounds hit water first, sending up geysers. Then they found the boat, punching through aluminum hull with sharp metallic impacts. Someone on shore was engaging them with decent marksmanship. The boat crew returned fire immediately. But incoming rounds kept coming, and Reeves heard the worst sound possible: the gurgle of water rushing into the boat through hull breaches. 3 holes, maybe 4. The boat was taking on water fast. They were several hundred meters from friendly lines. If the boat sank, they'd have to swim, making them easy targets. Chen grabbed a bucket and started bailing, but it was futile. Water came in faster than any human could bail. The boat was sinking fast. Santos pulled his pack around and started digging. His fingers found what he needed: a bar of soap. Plain, standard-issue military soap, partially used, about 2/3 original size. He dropped to his knees in rising water and located the nearest hull breach. Water jetted through with significant pressure. He pressed the soap directly against the hole, using his palm to apply maximum pressure. The soap, soft from his pack and further softened by water, molded itself into the breach. Santos pressed harder, forcing soap into every gap. The stream slowed, then stopped almost completely. He moved to the second breach, repeating the process. Same technique, same result. The soap conformed to the hole's shape, and cold river water hitting it caused it to harden slightly, creating an effective temporary seal. The third hole was larger, positioned near the keel. Santos leaned over the side, half his body in water to reach it. But he managed, pressing another soap chunk into the breach and holding until the seal took. The water inside stopped rising, still ankle-deep but not getting worse. The boat's natural buoyancy reasserted itself. They continued moving downstream, slower than before but still moving. 10 minutes later, the boat crossed into friendly territory. The shore changed from hostile jungle to established defensive positions manned by their own forces. Radio communications shifted from tense updates to casual confirmation. The mission was complete. As they pulled to the dock, Reeves watched his team disembark. Everyone looked exhausted, filthy, ready to sleep for a week. But they also looked satisfied. They'd completed an impossible mission against significant odds. The asset was handed to intelligence personnel for debriefing. Equipment was collected for maintenance. Standard post-mission protocols began with bureaucratic efficiency. But before they dispersed, Reeves gathered them one last time. He didn't make a speech. He just looked at each person individually and nodded. The nod said everything. "Good job, glad you're alive, we did something today." Santos still had that plastic bottle in his pack, melted and useless now, but he kept it. Jackson had tucked his button and needle back into his sewing kit, a tiny compass that saved them when technology failed. Thompson's socks were probably biohazards, but they'd cooled a machine gun barrel. The mirror fragment was wrapped carefully in cloth. Later, after showers and hot food and first full sleep in days, they'd tell the story. Other soldiers would hear about the plastic bottle suppressor, the improvised compass, the mirror periscope, the sock-cooled machine gun, the soap-sealed boat hull. Some would laugh. Some would take notes. All would understand the underlying lesson. The military provided incredible technology and extensive training, but combat often came down to the gap between what you had and what you needed. That gap could only be bridged by human creativity, by the ability to look at trash or mundane items and see possibility instead of limitation. Survival wasn't about having the perfect tool for every situation. It was about making any tool perfect for the situation you found yourself in. It was about refusing to accept that a problem was unsolvable just because the obvious solution wasn't available. The jungle had tested them continuously. It threw enemy patrols, treacherous terrain, equipment failures, and hostile fire at them without pause. And each time they'd found an answer. Not always elegant, not always by the book, but an answer that worked. That was the real story. Not just that they completed the mission, but how. Not with overwhelming force or superior firepower or perfect intelligence. They did it with improvisation, adaptation, and stubborn refusal to let circumstances dictate outcomes. These weren't just tricks or clever hacks. They were proof that the most important weapon any soldier carried wasn't in their arsenal or pack. It was between their ears. The ability to think, to adapt, to look at what you had and figure out what you could do with it. That was the difference between getting home and not getting home. The jungle had been unforgiving, hostile, and deadly. But the squad had been more creative than the jungle was hostile. They'd refused to accept limitations their environment tried to impose. They'd looked at problems that seemed impossible and found possible solutions hidden in plain sight. Technology would fail. Equipment would break. Plans would fall apart. But creativity, adaptability, and refusal to give up were tools that never ran out of ammunition, never needed batteries, and never wore out. The squad survived not because they were best equipped or most heavily armed. They survived because, when faced with the choice between accepting defeat and finding another way, they chose to find another way every single time. They took ordinary objects,